Welcome back to Mighty Habits, everybody. I'm Steven, and I am so pumped for today's deep dive.
I'm Mary, and I'm excited too.
Yeah, we're going to be tackling some seriously big ideas from the book Sapiens, A Brief History of Humankind by Yuval Noah Harari.
It's a fascinating read.
Oh, absolutely. And one of the things that just completely blew me away was this whole idea that there used to be 6 different human species,
Six,
like walking around on this planet with us, and now it's just us Homo sapiens. So what happened to all of our hominid cousins?
yeah, it's like a prehistoric mystery novel. But
Right.
one of the things that Harari does so well is he doesn't just give you like a dry list of facts. He really explores the how and the why
Yeah.
of how we Homo sapiens became top dog on this planet. And I think it really makes you think about like where we fit in, you know?
Totally. And I think what sets this book apart from your typical history book is how he brings in biology and evolutionary science.
Yeah.
It's not just about dates and battles.
Right.
It's about understanding the biological underpinnings of our behavior,
Yeah.
our societies, even empires. What's your take on that?
It's brilliant because he can ask these really big questions by blending these different perspectives, like how did humans fit into the global ecosystem throughout history?
Yeah.
How did our biology shape the empires that we built and the societies that we live in today?
It's like he's giving us a new pair of glasses.
Right.
To view the human story, speaking of new perspectives, it's interesting that he starts his story 70,000 years ago with what he calls the cognitive revolution.
Yeah.
Is that when we became truly sapiens, in his view, what happened back then?
Well, he argues that around 70,000 years ago, something incredible happened to the human mind. We developed the ability to think abstractly,
Gotcha.
to use complex language, and this is key. We developed the ability to believe in things that don't physically exist.
Like what?
Like myths and gods and nations.
No.
And that was a total game changer.
So it's not just about like physical evolution.
Right.
It's about a change in how we think and communicate.
Exactly. And Harari goes on to show how this cognitive leap set the stage for everything that came after, like agriculture, cities, complex social structures.
Wow, okay, I'm hooked.
Huh.
Can you give me a specific example of how he connects these ancient developments like the cognitive revolution
Sure.
to issues we're dealing with today?
Well, he talks about how our ancient tendency to form like tribal identities, which was crucial for survival way back when,
Right.
can manifest as political polarization and social division in our world today.
So it's like echoes of the past.
Exactly.
Still shaping us even if we don't realize it.
Right.
Hold on, we were just talking about all these different human species
Yeah.
walking around tens of thousands of years ago, and now it's just us. How does he explain Homo sapiens ending up as the lone survivor? Was it pure luck or?
He explores a few different factors, actually, like our ability to cooperate in large numbers is a big one, thanks to those fancy language skills we picked up.
Makes sense.
We could form complex societies and work together in ways that other human species just couldn't. But he also looks at some of the not-so-great aspects of our success, like our capacity for violence and our impact on the environment.
So it's a bit of a mixed bag.
It is.
Amazing collaborators, but maybe not always for the best reasons.
It's complicated.
This is getting really interesting. Before we go any further, though, what kind of reading experience can people expect from Sapiens? Is it a dense academic book, or is it more approachable?
One of the things that makes this book so great is that Harari's a phenomenal storyteller. He
Yeah.
takes these really complex ideas
Yeah.
and weaves them into this narrative that is both informative and, dare I say, entertaining.
Okay, good.
He uses really vivid language and examples that anyone can relate to. You don't need a PhD to get swept up in this story.
That's good to hear, because who doesn't love a good story?
Right.
But I'm also getting the sense that this is more than just a light read.
Right.
It seems like it really tackles some pretty big questions about humanity.
You're right. This book is packed with aha moments that'll stick with you long after you finish it.
Yeah.
It's about understanding the path of human history, the choices that we've made and the potential consequences of those choices. It's about reflecting on what it means to be human, the good and the bad, and what kind of future we want to create.
Wow, that sounds incredibly thought-provoking. So if you're all curious about humanity, where we came from, and where we might be going, then Sapiens is definitely worth checking out.
Absolutely. It's a book that sparks real conversations and encourages us to think more deeply about our place in the world.
And for our listeners, stick with us because we've got a lot more to cover
We do.
and some incredible insights to uncover. And don't forget to follow or subscribe to Mighty Habits for more thought-provoking deep dives like this one. We release new episodes every week, so you won't want to miss a single one.
See you next time. One of the most surprising things I found in Sapiens is how Harari challenges our assumptions about human progress.
How so?
Well, take the agricultural revolution, for example. We tend to think of it as this triumphant moment in human history.
Yeah, the foundation of civilization.
Right. But Harari kind of flips that narrative on its head.
So he's saying it wasn't all good.
Yeah. It was more of a mixed bag, a trade-off where we gained some things, but lost others. What are some of the downsides to agriculture that he points out?
Yeah, what were those downsides?
Well, he argues that, for one, it made us more vulnerable to famine and disease.
Really?
Yeah, think about it. Hunter-gatherers had a diverse diet,
They did.
and they were always moving around.
Right.
So they weren't as likely to get wiped out by one bad harvest or an outbreak.
That makes sense.
But once we started relying on just a few crops and staying put in one place, those risks became much bigger.
I see.
He even says that early farmers were often less healthy and lived shorter lives than their hunter-gatherer ancestors.
So we think of agriculture as progress and abundance, but he's saying it might have actually made life harder in some ways.
Exactly, and he doesn't stop there. He also says that agriculture led to longer working hours
Oh, no.
and more social hierarchy. Hunter-gatherers, with their diverse food sources and more egalitarian social structures, might have actually had more free time and a better work-life balance than the farmers that came after them.
It really makes you think about what we mean by progress.
Right.
Like, what are we really measuring? Is it just about stuff and technology?
That's a good question.
Or are there other things to consider, like quality of life,
Yes, definitely.
social equality, our connection to nature?
All of that, and I think that's what's so great about Harari. He doesn't shy away from these tough questions. He makes us confront the complexities of human history.
Yeah.
And acknowledge that progress isn't always a straight line.
You mentioned earlier that Harari connects our ancient past to our modern world.
Mm-hmm.
So how does that play out with his analysis of the agricultural revolution? I mean, most of us aren't farmers anymore.
Right.
So how is that relevant to us?
He argues that the agricultural revolution totally changed our relationship with nature and with each other. It made us obsessed with controlling the environment, accumulating possessions,
Right.
and establishing dominance over other species.
Oh, wow.
And he suggests that those tendencies are still with us today, even in our high-tech society.
Can you give me an example?
Yeah, sure. Think about how anxious we are about food security.
Okay.
We have supermarkets full of food, yet we still worry about shortages and prices.
That's true.
That's a legacy of the agricultural revolution,
Excess.
where our survival became dependent on a few fragile crops.
Interesting. Or how about our consumer culture?
Right.
The constant desire for more stuff.
Exactly. That's directly tied to the shift to agriculture, which made accumulation and ownership central to our way of life.
So these early choices that we made as a species are still influencing us today, even if we're not aware of it.
Exactly. Harari's showing us that the past isn't just something we study in books. It's alive in us,
Yeah.
influencing our thoughts, our feelings, our actions.
That's both fascinating and a little bit creepy. Speaking of ancient legacies, earlier we were talking about the cognitive revolution
Right.
and how it set us apart from other animals. So
Yeah.
what exactly changed in our brains?
It's not just about brain size, although Homo sapiens do have relatively large brains for our body size.
Okay.
What Harari really focuses on is the development of language.
Right. And our ability to think abstractly. He says we developed this unique ability to communicate complex ideas, to share stories, and to believe in things that don't physically exist.
So it's not just about how big our brains were, but what we could do with them. And you're saying this ability to believe in things that don't exist, that's what sets us apart.
It sounds weird at first, but when you think about it, it's really profound.
Okay.
Think about concepts like money, human rights, or nations.
Right.
These things don't have any inherent physical existence. They're shared myths that we've created
Yeah.
and agreed to believe in. And these myths have allowed us to cooperate on a massive scale,
Yeah.
build complex societies, achieve things that would be impossible for individuals acting alone.
Right. So our ability to believe in these shared stories, these fictions, as he calls them,
Yes,
is actually one of our greatest strengths.
exactly. It's what allows us to collaborate, innovate, build empires.
Powerful stuff. It is. But as Harari points out, it's also a double-edged sword. These myths can be incredibly powerful, and they can be used for good or for bad. They can unite us, but they can also be used to manipulate and exploit people.
Oh, I see.
Like, think about propaganda and ideology throughout history,
Oh, yeah.
used to justify violence and oppression.
It's a reminder that our greatest strengths can also be our greatest weaknesses.
Definitely.
We have this incredible power to believe in things that don't exist.
Right.
but we also have to use that power wisely
Absolutely.
and ethically. So far, we've talked about the agricultural revolution and the cognitive revolution. Are there any other big mind-blowing moments from the book that stand out to you?
You know, one that I found really interesting was his discussion of the rise of empires.
Oh, yeah, empires. What does he say about those?
He argues that empires, despite their often brutal methods and oppressive regimes, actually played a crucial role in shaping the world we live in today.
Oh, that's interesting.
They spread ideas, technologies, and cultures across vast distances, creating a level of interconnectedness that had never existed before.
I guess that makes sense. Even if those empires weren't always benevolent, they still facilitated the exchange of knowledge
Right.
and ideas.
Exactly. Think about the Roman Empire, for example.
Okay.
It was undeniably a powerful and often ruthless force,
Yeah.
but it also spread Roman law, architecture, and language throughout Europe, laying the foundation for many modern societies.
Oh,
And even though it eventually collapsed,
of course.
its legacy continues to influence us today.
It's like empires were these complex, messy,
Yeah,
but ultimately essential forces in the story of human civilization.
I like that.
They were far from perfect, but they helped to shape the world we live in.
That's a great way to put it. And what's interesting is that Harari challenges us to view them not just through the lens of good versus evil,
Yeah.
but as complex systems that had both positive and negative impacts.
Right.
He wants us to embrace nuance and complexity, which is something we could all use a little more of.
Especially these days. Earlier, we talked about how Harari doesn't shy away from the darker chapters of human history, our capacity for violence, our impact on the environment. Does he leave us with a sense of doom and gloom? Or is there any hope in his perspective?
I think he strikes a balance. He doesn't sugarcoat the fact that we've done some terrible things as a species.
To each other.
Yes, to each other and to the planet.
Yeah.
But he also sees potential for change. He believes that by understanding our past, by becoming aware of the patterns that have led us down these destructive paths, we can make better choices going forward.
So it's not about dwelling on the bad stuff.
No.
It's about learning from it.
Exactly. It's about recognizing our capacity for both great good and great harm, and choosing to steer ourselves towards a more just and sustainable path.
It's a powerful message and a timely one. I think it perfectly captures the spirit of this book, which is all about asking big questions, challenging assumptions, and broadening our understanding of what it means to be human. You know, for a book that spans thousands of years, Sapiens really makes you think about life today.
It does.
One thing that stuck with me was his discussion of happiness.
Oh, yeah. What about it?
He says, even with all of our tech and wealth, we're not necessarily any happier than our hunter-gatherer ancestors. It seems counterintuitive, right?
It does seem like a paradox, but Harari suggests that happiness really comes down to expectations.
Yeah.
And our expectations are always changing, you know?
Yeah, we always want more.
Exactly. We're always comparing ourselves to others. And that can lead to this feeling of dissatisfaction, even when we have everything we need.
It's like we're on a treadmill.
Hedonic treadmill.
Right, we keep running and running.
But never really getting anywhere.
It's kind of a bleak picture.
I don't think Harari's being totally pessimistic, though.
Okay.
I think he's just pointing out the potential downsides of our modern consumer culture.
So it's not just about accumulating more stuff then.
Right.
What does he suggest we focus on instead?
He doesn't give a simple answer,
Okay.
but he emphasizes things like mindfulness, gratitude, and purpose.
So appreciating what we have.
Exactly. Focusing on our connections with others, finding joy in the simple things.
It's about shifting our focus from external achievements to internal fulfillment.
Right. Finding contentment from within instead of seeking it from outside sources.
That makes a lot of sense.
Yeah.
He also talks about purpose, right?
Yes. Finding meaning and purpose in our lives, having something bigger than ourselves to work towards.
Yeah, it gives you a reason to get up in the morning.
It does.
Before we wrap up this deep dive, I have to ask, what's the one big question that Sapiens leaves you with?
That's a good question. For me, it's his discussion about the future of humanity.
Oh, yeah.
He talks about AI, genetic engineering, all these emerging technologies
Right.
that could completely change what it means to be human.
Whoa.
And he asks these really profound questions about how we should navigate this uncharted territory.
Yeah.
Are we on the verge at a new stage of human evolution?
That's a big one.
Or are we heading towards a future that we can't even imagine?
It's both exciting and a little bit terrifying.
It is, and I think that's what makes Sapiens such a powerful book. It doesn't give us easy answers, but it challenges us to think about the choices we're making today
Right.
and how they might shape the future of our species.
So many big questions.
So many big questions like, what kind of world do we want to create? What does it mean to be human in this age of technology?
Yeah.
And what kind of future do we want to leave for the generations to come?
Those are heavy but important questions.
Definitely.
I think this deep dive into Sapiens has been truly transformative.
Me too.
It's challenged me to think differently about the past, present, and future.
It's definitely a book that stays with you.
To our listeners, if you haven't already, add Sapiens to your reading list. It's a journey that will challenge your assumptions and spark your curiosity.
And join us again next time for another deep dive into a thought-provoking book.
Until then, keep those mighty habits going and those minds curious. We'll see you next time.